Setting up self-serve is trickier than it may appear. How can you make it a quality path for your advertiser while not being overwhelming for your AdOps team? We're here to talk about self-serve, but that's not all we're going to talk about, right? We are going to talk about, we're not just talking about the self-serve setup. We're talking about all of the reasons why people choose self-serve, as well as what self-serve does for people. And it's for AdOps, for revenue teams. And especially, we want to learn about how folks are handling the pandemic as well, right? So everyone here has a story to share. We have Peo from DanAds, Jeff from TSM, the other Jeff from the Washington Post, and Allie from Hearst. So the first thing we'll do is I'll go around the room. I think you can introduce yourselves better than I can, and just tell us about either if you already have self-serve, your experience with self-serve. Well, no, I don't want to go too deep into your self-serve. Just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your role, and then we'll get into the conversation. So I'll start with Allie, ladies first.
All right, so I am Allie Mottola, and I'm very happy to be here today. I'm Senior Director of Data and Optimization at Hearst. A large part of my role is overseeing the optimization of campaigns across our 20-plus portfolio of sites, and then also overseeing the corresponding co-branded social work we do with our advertisers. And an additional project that I took on while at Hearst was overseeing the build and rollout of our self-serve platform, Audience Select, which we released last year.
Thank you, Allie. Now let's go on to Jeff Mayer. Are you on mute, Jeff?
Just to make sure I get feedback. So that's my introduction right there. I'm Jeff Mayer. I'm Vice President of Programmatic at TSM Esports. We're the largest esports professional team, and Forbes just came out with an article that we're the most valuable one too. Yay. So I manage all indirect monetization, basically kind of straddling the line between our product team, engineering, and monetization. So kind of have my hands in everything here.
Sounds great. Jeff Turner, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Jeff Turner. I lead commercial product at the Washington Post. That includes two brands. So a lot of the experimentation and never been done before, innovative ad tech, we build and develop specifically for the Post under Red Brand, which is our research, experimentation, and development brand. Anything that's successful there, we also turn into SaaS software that we sell to other publishers. And anything that's developed there, we sell under the brand's use technology. So I oversee product on both those sides.
Okay, sounds great. Peo, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so hi, my name is Peo. So I'm the co-founder of a self-serve company called DanAds. So, yep, that's me.
Okay. Peo, I don't know why I said Peo. I know your name is Peo. Anyway, let's kick it off. Let's talk a little bit about, we've had a very challenging 2020 and sales has definitely changed. And with that, we are hearing from publishers that the Rev team, the AdOps team, the relationship is changing with sales. So I'm just curious a little bit about how that has changed for all of you. Anyone?
I can go first. Like from our standpoint, we build a lot of ad formats, like a lot. We have about 30 different proprietary ad formats that we build in-house. And we're powering probably about 20% of our demand if on an impression basis is our own ad formats. And what happened when the pandemic struck is that we had to change all that ad messaging, right? So the speed it takes to get to market became increasingly important. That ability to kind of turn on the dime became really the need. It wasn't just the targeting on, how to circumvent COVID news or how to specifically target it. It was really how to match that creative message specifically with the content that you're targeting. So we invested a lot of tech and resources on building out the ability to kind of, target specific brand suitability topics, but we needed to match it with that creative. That's kind of the way and the approach that we're thinking about self-service, is really that ability to reduce the time to market and increase the amount of ad variety that a brand has. So that's really the big shift and really what allowed us to kind of start doing a lot of testing around self-service, start doing a lot of testing around matching our brand suitability options with unique creatives, and really how we're thinking about the future of news monetization, kind of anchored in reduced time to market for campaigns.
Right. That's very interesting, because a lot of people, I think, are just thinking of self-serve as a tool to capture spend, right? Incremental spend, primarily from SMBs, right? So it's interesting to hear that perspective. Jeff Mayer, you have an interesting experience with self-service, but beyond that, can you talk pandemic a little bit? You just recently, during the pandemic, made a switch from one company to the other. So
that's always fun. Changing jobs. When everybody's at home anyway. But I've been really lucky in that right before I joined TSM, I was at SoundCloud. So in both instances, we saw increases in your usage because we're a streaming platform at SoundCloud. So people had more time to listen to music, and then at TSM, you could see the massive growth in viewership in video games, playing video games. So I've kind of been on the good side of COVID in terms of being at two companies that have actually seen exponential growth during this time. And on the ad sales side, it is, I guess, just more difficult to capture brand dollars when some brands haven't really been spending, or at least as much as they typically would. But we've been pretty good in developing symbiotic relationship with our ad sales team since I've joined. Figuring out who the endemic advertisers need to be that we can reach out to that should be advertising on our platform. So.
Okay. And Allie, how has the nature of your relationship with sales changed?
I think since I've been in ad tech, the words that we throw around are adaptable and agile. And I think never before have we been as adaptable and as agile as we've been through this crisis. And it's been really interesting for me at Hearst to see the way that our sales team, and we've partnered with our sales teams to really be consultative to our advertisers. So helping them understand how their customers' routines have changed, their needs have changed, and then we can bring them programs that adapt to that. So especially if you think about our luxury advertisers, maybe we're not using luxury in the way of going out as much, but how can we bring luxury home, and how can Hearst kind of help build that story? And another part of our business that's been incredibly agile this year has been our custom content creation studio, and just seeing what they were able to do without being able to do some live production like they were used to. It's just the creativity that has come out of this is phenomenal.
Right. Customizations, that's one of the big things that's come out of the pandemic too, is that advertisers are looking for more customizations, right? And how can you leverage tech to help meet those needs, right? I think is very interesting. So with that in mind, Jeff Turner, I want to come back to you a little bit on where you mentioned how you guys are thinking about self-service and you're running some tests. Can you talk about how it's working for you guys, how you're setting things up? Mm-hmm.
Sure. So we've been doing a very long and careful alpha test with self-service. So we've had about 100 publishers sign on to our web-based buying platform for self-service. But those advertisers are all very local and regional to the DC area. we're in talk with with Peo to really expand this to more global brands. But the tests that we've seen at the local level, we've tested basically kind of static formats that don't change, that aren't time relevant. There's a sense of urgency to them, and then we have the same advertisers basically use creatives that have a sense of urgency or time based. So we did a test last year with the Washington Nationals where instead of buy 2 tickets get 1 free, they would talk about the weather for the game tomorrow, right? That sense of speed and timeliness that could really unlock performance. And overall, the click-through rate of the banners was almost double. And there's this huge difference between time-relevant ad formats, like time-relevant messaging, creative messaging, versus ones that are static and never changing. This is where I think there's a huge opportunity around self-service, is really moving from historical managed services where an AdOps team is trafficking a unit and it's 2 months old and it stays live as part of a sponsorship for 3-4 months and it doesn't change. That gets stale, and it's not just the staleness. You're not solving that through frequency capping. It's the lack of the urgency and the time relevancy in the creative message itself. And that's what we're looking to expand upon with a more robust self-service model that we're in the process of building out.
Sounds awesome. Jeffrey Mayer, your self-service setup, when you were at SoundCloud, and I know you've used it Shazam as well, right? I mean, I think for you, it's been more about operational efficiencies, right? As well as a sales tool.
Yeah,
right?
There are a few reasons why we wanted to have a self-serve platform, and with DanAds at Shazam, we were the first U.S. client of theirs. When I started evaluating platforms that really could have the capabilities of what we wanted. So I use self-serve in 2 different ways. With Shazam, it was to allow the record labels that we partnered with to deliver short flight, small budget campaigns, because they're endemic advertisers to Shazam, but typically they're not a large brand spender. So they come to us on a Friday afternoon saying, hey, we want to run a campaign over the weekend for $500. How much inventory can you provide us? So then our AdOps team would have to forecast traffic, sign the IO, implement the campaign, deliver it, and then over the weekend you'd have to make sure it delivered. It was too much of a pain to deal with. So with Peo and DanAds, we were able to set up a platform for our small labels to access it directly. We trained all the labels on it, and they could flight, forecast, deliver all their media on those short bursts as they need to. At SoundCloud, it was slightly different, where we were using it not for small advertisers, but for our content creators themselves. So we had, hundreds of thousands of artists on SoundCloud that all want to be seen and heard. And they would upload their tracks, and a lot of them don't get traction because they're just buried in a mound of other songs. So, as a promotional tool, as a way for them to get more exposure and be present on the top of our feed, we allowed our artists to actually buy promotion on SoundCloud, where they'd be, highlighted and featured in different areas. So this is a way for us to tap into a completely different vertical than just advertisers for a revenue stream. So that was, really powerful for us, is, thinking about a different way to utilize our audience base and a way to, make revenue. So.
Right. I'm interested in the piece there about educating the client as well as educating the sales team, right? Like, how do you educate the sales team on this? And I think, Allie, you have an interesting story for that. Right?
Yeah. So, education has always been a big piece of what I do in my work. Coming from being a programmatic trader and then ultimately an account director as well, it's always important to be able to explain the technical components of what you're doing to people who may have varying degrees of understanding. So we definitely encounter the same themes when rolling out self-service. And some of the things that I've found most helpful is just, number one, just meeting people where they are. So trying to be really understanding about somebody who maybe has anxiety because they've never logged into a platform like this before, or embracing those people who say, like, I'm excited to do something new, give me my login, and use those people to help become your champions of the platform. So there's definitely, a few sales teams at Hearst who we specifically trained on the platform before we even rolled it out, because we knew that their businesses were particularly relevant to the platform. So we wanted them to feel really comfortable before rolling it out. And then the other thing that we did that sort of after the fact that we found really helpful was creating a short deck about sort of everything an advertiser or a salesperson would find in the platform if they logged into the platform, but giving them that preview ahead of time so they feel really comfortable and empowered to log in and do it themselves, because a lot of people have never done this themselves. So things we've included in our deck are creative specs. Even though they're available in the platform, people love to see their creative specs on a deck, so it's there for easy access. Benchmarks of our products, a description of what our products are and how we think they work best, the targeting that's available, and then just a really easy slide of, like, here's how to actually log in and pull reporting. And so we found that to be really helpful. And then what I think has been really great as well is DanAds actually worked with us after the platform was built and released to add a button in the platform where someone could even go in and re-download the guide while they're in there. So education materials like that, I think, are really helpful.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that,
go ahead, Jeff.
benchmarks are really important for self-serve. We're dealing with users that don't necessarily spend a lot of money, so they don't necessarily understand the ecosystem that we're in or what the performance should be. And you have to really, show them or tell them and explain them the value of what they're getting when they only deliver 5,000 impressions for a small budget campaign. So, what are their expectations? And, this is how our platform works, and this is why you should use it. It's really important.
Right. Are you finding the same thing, Jeff Turner, with your tests?
I think there's two ways to think of it. So a lot of the self-service that Allie and Jeff have mentioned is, it's kind of lower dollar kind of tail, and how do you recoup that? That's definitely the case there, right? Like those clients, they have questions on benchmarks, on performance, is this good? The way that we're also thinking about it is kind of beyond that, but for high end, right? Like the way that I think about self-service is you're really enabling a person to become a creator. Right, like I look at a self-service tool very much as a creator tool, where managed service is very much that brand or agency being a collaborator, right? Like you have that person to work with and understand an ecosystem. But it's really surprising what people can do when they're creators, right? If you give them the tools, they can really experiment and be themselves. And I think that's where a lot of big brands really found success on social is having that brand voice and that brand narrative. And being able to leverage, a platform for in their own way as their own brand. And so, yes, we're seeing the same thing. I think benchmarks and that is really more important for that tail end. How do you kind of make that longer and cement those relationships? And we're really thinking not just that, but also on the very high end on how can we activate those brands by giving them the tools, whether it's creative or reduction of time to market, signal insights, like those other components to self-service to really unlock that long-term value.
Yeah, and I can jump in as well, and we see this a lot. So I think so the days when you add a self-serve to your web page and say advertise with us, those days are over. So coming with self-serve now, because there's a lot of advertisers out there that are really good on what they're doing when it comes to self-serve as well. They're using other self-serve tools, They understand what they're going to do. So, but still, you need to educate. You need to educate them and say, this is the value by using our self-serve. So why should I use your self-serve instead of going to Facebook or Google? So it's all about like what your proposition is, what is the product that you're selling, and you need to look at, and you need to have a marketing team beside you. You need to have sales, like Ali is talking about, going out there and literally blast out the self-serve and talk to advertisers why they should use them, because it's not about getting them to do one booking. Is getting them to do one booking with you, and then they can take over, and then they can start using a platform like they would using sending you an email the first time they want to do a booking with you, because you need to talk with them over the phone. You need to tell them what they're going to book with you, and it's the same with the self-serve. So the first booking is always the hardest, and then it's more about how you present the self-serve and how you present the results. And I think everyone and every publisher has have a good insights how they present results, because they do it every day to other advertisers as well. So
yeah, and to echo what Peo is saying, I think at Hearst, we took the approach that we believe our sales team is hugely important in the self-serve process, because this is still about building and maintaining that relationship. And one, for many of these advertisers, we're looking at this as a tool to capture incremental revenue. And so for a lot of these advertisers, they're new to Hearst still. So making sure that they understand our value proposition, and then making sure that we're, this isn't a set it and forget it platform, right? So you need to check in with your advertiser and ask them how that first flight is going. Ask them if they've been able to make some of those optimizations that we believe we've empowered them to make. And if not, what's the feedback on that and how can we improve? And ultimately, this is a way to introduce a lot of advertisers to Hearst who maybe otherwise wouldn't have had the opportunity. And how do we then grow their business from that? So I think relationship management is hugely important.
Okay. Speaking of relationship management, I'm curious about I keep using the word curious because I do have a curiosity about all of this, trying to understand it all. The challenges, I'm curious about some of the challenges with getting buy-in, setting up, which teams have to be on board in optimizing this setup. Can any of you speak to some of that?
Yeah, there are definitely challenges sometimes. Our sales team is always concerned about their position at the company. From the time that the word programmatic came out, they've been concerned about their jobs. And as they've seen, it hasn't really impacted, what they do or how they sell. They just have to learn. They have more tools in their belt to be able to do it. Self-serve is similar to that. They really shouldn't be scared of using this platform or the ability for advertisers to use this platform, because again, it's just another tool that they have at their disposal to drive more clients to it. And they can still get that revenue recognition on their commission check by having advertisers that link to their account. So I see it as a benefit for them to advocate for this kind of a platform as opposed to be scared of it.
Right. So, I asked about challenges with buy-in, but as well as, optimizing, right, this setup, right? Who needs to be involved? And how do you communicate with them? Allie, I see you shaking your head.
Yes, so this was a question that I had when I first signed on to the project. How is this all going to work? So I came onto the project after sort of the agreement had been in place with DanAds, and they were really just looking for somebody to project manage it. And I was really fortunate to have the opportunity come to me. And I always love a good challenge, so I jumped at it. And then I sort of had this thought of, how am I going to do this? I don't have any background in coding, in dev, UI design. What I do think I brought to the table is the fact that as a programmatic trader, I've been in probably, over 30 different trading platforms, buying platforms. And so I know as an end user what a good experience is. And so I tried to hone in on that skill. And what I was incredibly thankful for and impressed with was how easy DanAds made the process, and how few resources we really needed to pull into that process. Because I was working on this part-time, but I was the most on my team, the most involved with this. And so I was able to sort of pull from our engineers when we needed them, but really like DanAds took care of so much of that. I was able to pull from our video team when we needed their expertise, from our our creative team, our website design team when we needed them. But DanAds really brought a full solution to us. And I think that was immensely helpful, when you have publishers who are really trying to make their resources stretch as far as they can.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, like all you really need to know is what a good UX is. Even on the sell side, from the buy side, like we use SSPs and ad servers, and we know what is terrible and what's not. And the majority are terrible. So if you can build something to your liking, saying, oh my God, I wish that a platform had these buttons or this control or this view, and you get the chance to build that without needing an engineer, that's pretty cool.
Right. Jeff Turner, in terms of you now testing it, how important is the client feedback?
It's huge. I mean, I think speaking to some of the hurdles that we had, I think sales was concerned that they didn't have that, tight knit, like they weren't working with them and giving wrap reports and doing all those things that they were used to, right? And so, like Jeff mentioned, I think the biggest benefit that we had is showing our salespeople that relationship was still there, even if they weren't doing like a, hey, end of this big bulk static campaign. Like, hey, they're going in and they're making changes and they're making multiple buys, and that relationship still exists. I think that's been the biggest, I don't want to say learning, because I was aware that would occur, but like in terms of buy-in from our sales team, that has been really beneficial.
And really, the only thing that's done is reduce the amount of time to go to launch a campaign and all the preliminary steps that you have to take for ad operations. For sure. So when you think about wasting time on different tasks like trafficking, that's a waste.
Checking
of time.
Avails.
Checking avails, that's a waste of time. This all is saved for your AdOps team with the amount of time that they have to spend actually onboarding an order. Where now they can do that, in minutes with the SelfServe platform, and then they can spend the rest of their time optimizing and upselling. That's what you really want your team to do.
When I give a demo of Audience Select, one of my favorite parts of the demo is doing the avails check, just to see how seamless and just knowing what's going on behind the scenes to do it. It's my favorite part.
Right. I mean, we could talk about SelfServe all day, just SelfServe, the setup and your anecdotes, right? I think though too, we want to talk about, because some of the stuff that's important and on everybody's mind, like how are we preparing for the death of the third-party cookie, and how are you dealing with brand safety and transparency? I think if we could talk about some of those things, and there's a role that SelfServe can play in these areas as well, right? So first, let's deal with the death of the third-party cookie. What kind of ad tech solutions are you looking into to deal with the third-party cookie's demise? So
yeah, I'll kick off, because I was just going over this with my team. Like, I think there's a couple ways to think of it. I think the one way is to say, well, that's going away. What other signals, like contextual signals, can we leverage? Brand suitability. I personally think that brand suitability a lot of times is built to circumvent news versus lean into news, right? Like, I mean, we're the Washington Post, so obviously we produce a lot of news. We need to get people to actually see value in targeting news, as opposed to building tools to circumvent the news and find the right news to target. right? And this is where I think there's a huge value in the reduction of time to take a campaign to market, and also the ability to kind of better leverage real-time and activated ad format messaging. So to me, like the biggest benefit is not just brand suitability, like, hey, I'm a banking client and I can target personal finance now. Like, that's brand suitability, but obviously it doesn't make any money off news content. But if you show the brand, hey, the audience that you're intending to consume is consuming news, hard news, because hard news is where meaningful conversations are happening and everybody's consuming news right now. And you have a way to reduce the time it takes to get a creative message to market and pair each creative with that particular type of hard news, that becomes really, really powerful. We actually did a whole experiment in April where we gave away 250 million impressions in Apple News targeting COVID content. And we had like 20 brands, all local brands, that normally would like look away from COVID content, like they would block it, right? Like literally one was a concert venue, a local concert venue in Virginia. And they created ad messaging around what they were doing and live segments and donation and supporting musicians. And we gave them free impressions to target that content. And their click-through rate was like 10 times the average industry benchmark. Like these local in Apple News, no audience targeting, super privacy focused. Like the performance was there. It was 4x what they were doing on web with audience targeting. So I think that a lot of people are afraid because they're losing the currency that media has been traded with over the past 25 years. But really, ultimately, what I think they can gain is this ability of tying contextual signals and the ability to launch campaigns. Like that opportunity exists now that didn't exist in 1994 when cookies were invented. So I think that's a huge, huge benefit.
Yeah, it sounds.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have an answer of what's going to be used. I mean, in the last 10, 12 years that I've been doing this, that like I've seen the death and rise of everything. GDPR was going to kill us all. So it's another shiny object to be afraid of. The sky is falling. Contextual, is important. I think that programmatic was invented to get away from contextual. Everybody knows the sites that they should advertise on. It's how do you find your audience outside of those publishers and platforms. I don't know what's going to be true to replace cookies, but I'm sure that we'll have something, and then it'll be the death of that thing, and then we'll work around it.
I mean, on that note, I also think there's a lot of waste right now in cookie targeting, right? Like the average viewability is still 57% on desktop and 54% on mobile, right? Like that's still the open benchmark. And so I think while the third-party cookies are being deprecated, you're seeing other moves to increase overall quality. So Google's Web Vitals, right? Like that entire initiative is really to improve the quality of the site and the actual ad placements. What we're doing with our Zeus brand in terms of having ad rendering technology to improve overall viewability, to get it to that like 70, 80, 85, like the post is at an 85% benchmark for viewability. So we're focusing on supply quality as a way to kind of increase that performance, to kind of make up for the loss of audience level targeting through third-party cookies. Because ultimately, if performance is going to drop 30%, but you can target viewable supply that's 30% more seen, you're gonna average out. So I think the industry is looking at that too, especially with things like Web Vitals.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, the idea of the death of the third-party cookie, I think one thing that it's brought to the forefront, and we've always known this, is that it's sort of enlightened us all on the power of publishers' data, publishers' first-party data, and the ability to access that data within that publisher's owned and operated environment. And so, our big value proposition to our clients is about our engaged audiences and the actions they're taking on our site and the content that they love. And, now what we have in our self-serve tool is another way for advertisers to access that powerful combination of our data and our content in a brand safe environment. And that's something for us, a lot of our larger advertisers have had access to for a long time. And we've struggled with how do we provide that same kind of access to a smaller advertiser who maybe before their only way to tap into inventory was the open web, which is not a place that we would have wanted to put our data. And so if we can bring them in through self-service and give them that much more insight into the audience and their behavior, it's just a good match overall.
Yeah, that's really insightful. Thank you. So with the first party data, the brand safety and transparency, I think these are all really important ways that self-service tools can help solve for some of that stuff. But I was also interested in learning about a lot of advertisers are leaving social, or at least, yeah, you guys are all shaking your head. How can publishers now take advantage of this opportunity?
Trust. That's it. Period.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's it. Like trust in Facebook, and not just Facebook. Trust in platforms is decreasing. And like the way that I look at it is, the way that I look at platforms, whether it's a social platform or any aggregated platform versus publisher content, is, the aggregated platforms, they're rewarded by discovery, right? Discovery of content, but not the consumption of that content. Whereas publishers, it's the consumption of the content, and that has a lot of signals and value with the actual content that's being consumed. Where the discovery platforms, they can only monetize the individual. Right? There's no explicit signals as you're scrolling through 300 feet of a feed every session when you're not consuming anything. Like the only signals that you can have is the signals that you interact with and consume, or you as an individual from other third-party sites. So ultimately, I think it's leveraging trust, number one, because that's the huge differentiator. And if there's a second, it's doubling down on consumption data, because that's data that doesn't exist in an aggregated platform.
I wonder if it's the shift from we want to reach people, we just don't want to listen to people. We don't want to see what people have to say because that's scary. That's what social media is. It's a scary environment. Do I really want to see their thoughts, or do I just want to talk to them? That might be why they're leaving social media, is that they've seen who they're advertising to. Is like, maybe I don't want to be involved in that.
And I think the same. I think what we see is that the companies and advertisers, they want to be in a safe environment. So they want to know. They want to know. I had one company I talked to a few weeks ago, and he has seen his own ad on a video on YouTube that he was like, I don't want to have my brand shouldn't be there. And so I think it's a lot about that. I think brands now is going to move money into safe environments where they know that it's a safe content, and they know where they're coming to.
And Peo, it's funny because like I always think whenever I hear of like brand safety, it always seems to be a publisher level issue versus a platform level issue. But like, is your ad like next to news that is funding truthful information and where meaningful conversations are being had between a respected journalist and an educated and informed consumer? Like, is that like unsafe versus being in a cluttered news feed between people spreading hate language and comments on posts? And like, so it kind of blows my mind around like the fact that safety has become a publisher issue, when you're exactly right. I think really safety is less about the alignment of your advertisement and more about what your dollars are doing. We've done a lot with experimenting around the funding of access to content, meaning like you're not just sponsoring something that the Washington Post was going to do anyways, but your media dollars are being put towards something that unlock a value for an end user, whether that's access to content or a lighter ad experience or something else, but that exchange really takes this idea of safety to an entirely different value prop, which is a dual exchange of value between the marketer and the end consumer, which doesn't exist on those platforms.
True. Allie, do you have anything to add?
I mean, I think when we built our self-serve tool, we wanted it to be a place for advertisers to come to whatever the reason, wherever they're moving money from, but to feel like if they've been in a platform similar to that before, that they could very easily navigate our platform. So kind of keeping that in mind, and also keeping in mind that a lot of these advertisers might be used to sort of building their own creative within the platform of some of these other media sources, right? So how do we give them a similar experience in our platform, right? It's, not all of these small advertisers have readily made banners, right? So something that was really important to us was having the option of a platform that an advertiser could really go onto their website, pull down their logo, pull down a screenshot from their website, and create a native unit. And that just goes back to, having a unit that's native to Hearst, that relates to our readers in a way that they respond really well to. It kind of tells the story of, we have our audience that trusts us. We have our quality content. We have an ad unit for you that you can customize to your liking, and also fits with our content and is a good user experience. So I think in that way, we try to create an environment that advertisers are really excited to be in.
Okay. I think we touched on this a little bit, but I don't know how deep we dug into it. It's the idea, I think, especially talking about the pandemic, some folks may have lost some staff. I don't know if any of you lost any staff. Anybody? No? Everybody's team's intact? Nobody? Oh, yes. Okay, Jeff did.
But no, I'm giving a thumbs up, like we're good. We're good.
Oh,
we're
nobody.
good.
Everybody's team's intact. Oh, but nobody, and no sales?
Nope.
No? Oh, okay. You guys are all great and lucky, because what I wanted to know about, but I guess we can still talk about this on the other end, from how, self-service frees up man hours. We touched on it a bit, but I know Jeff Mayer, you have some stats, right?
I don't know if I would necessarily have stats, but like we kind of estimated that I think 85 to 95% of ad operations tasks were basically taken out by using self-serve. Like it was incredible the amount of time efficiency that we were able to see by utilizing the platform. It changed the scope of the ad operations role. I think it made them more prominent in the organization by taking on more responsibility beyond just trafficking campaigns. It's the worst job in the world, and I hate to say it for anyone that's watching this right now that's a trafficker. Sorry, you got the worst job in the world. But it's immense time savings on the ad operations side, and what you could leverage your employees to do other than that only helps your organization out.
Right, more strategic roles, right? More planning and strategic roles. That's why I was asking about, did any of you lose any staff? Because I would imagine that self-serve would help.
Well, I mean,
right?
we touched on, the third-party cookie deprecating. I think, even if, let's just say we're all even, in the next few years, you're going to see a rise of the need for more ad variety, whether it's for brand suitability matching or because of difficulty in frequency capping, cross publisher, right? Like those limitations and those needs are going to spike the need for more ad operations roles, right? Like that's a real thing. And so, when if you're running an ad operations team, which, I used to do, you're looking at this and you're going, all right, how do I staff this? How do I staff the increase? And what are some alternatives, right? And if you're staffing that, could it be put towards product or put towards, marketing or like those types of roles? And really even just people that are doing ad ops, like Jeff mentioned, how do they do things that aren't just data entry, right? Like, which is what those people want to do. They want to do strategic initiatives like, hey, how do we better connect operative with Salesforce and with GAM, and like those projects are what ad operations people want to do. So how do you really unlock that value for your team while also future proofing your organization? And I think that's a huge win for self-service versus kind of just maintaining the status quo of today.
Yeah. And it doesn't replace everything. Like, there's still customization, there's still content building, sponsorship events or digital executions that need that handheld, one-off
Sure.
opportunity. But for the majority of standard media, you can utilize that through self-serve, and that just replaces the burden.
Yeah, I mean, on the Hearst side, again, it goes back to the ability to scale what our teams can do. And, we have a huge support system in place to take care of clients who are we're doing end-to-end marketing with them, and we're running we're designing content for them. We're trafficking roadblocks, pushing that out on social. Those are very time-intensive and strategy-intensive relationships. And so what we needed to do was find a way to serve advertisers who really just want to run banners when they have a flash sale coming, or advertisers who really just want to be able to build, a unit themselves and maybe swap it out a couple of times over the weekend. How do we serve those clients while allowing our teams to also really focus their energy where we need their energy focused on these larger partnerships? So it's just about giving sort of each kind of advertiser what they need.
Yeah, and more on the advertiser side, there's dynamic creative optimization, right? So there's these algorithmic platforms that can update the size of the font or the color of the ad or the messaging around that. And maybe that's something that publishers can implement on our side for those advertisers that don't have those kind of budgets, that don't necessarily know how to modify creative or do sequential messaging to keep their ads fresh. So that might be like, the next step in terms of our responsibility is to take on a little bit of that, not marketing, but just creative optimization from a creative standpoint itself.
Okay. I think one more question that I think we could end with is like, for 2021, right? How are you thinking, right, about the ways in which vendor technology can help you beyond not just the brand safety and the first party data, but just as, things have changed, right? And people are still going to be working from home, even with the vaccine out. The nature of advertising has changed just dramatically, and it's going to be changed for a while. So how are you guys thinking about your team setups, your technology setups? How are you thinking? How are you planning? Allie, you went into the dark there a little bit.
First son has gotten me.
Okay. Jeff, I saw you shaking your head.
So in terms of my team, it's still very small. It's basically two of us at TSM on the programmatic side, and I plan on fleshing out our team more in 2021. And I may want to reposition how we hire from how we've set up operations teams in the past. I want to take a look at front end versus back end, ad integration versus reporting, and kind of play around with some of those positions to align them a little bit better with how the future of our teams are. Not that I necessarily want specialists, but I think that I just want to reframe how a team should be structured here and experiment a little bit with it. What we really need to do is understand, what do we want to facilitate? How do we facilitate? And then how did we facilitate it? and answer those three questions of the what, how, why. And if we can do that with our ad tech efficiently, that's really what I want to set up and make it streamlined.
Yeah, I mean, from go ahead, Al.
No, go ahead.
From mine, I think the biggest hurdle with working remotely is the having to schedule 30-minute blocks and not having like, hey, 2 people are free for 15 minutes and like, let's have a meeting. And so you have to be more like proactive around your entire team strategy. So I've spent a lot of time, aligning all of my teams and individuals around what are our North Stars for next year. Really, it's about, number one, for self-service, reducing the time to market. Like that is goal number one, is reducing time to market. The opposite side of that, like for the post specifically, is if we're reducing the time to market for self-service on our managed service, how do we create new and innovative optimizations that require developers that someone couldn't just design around, right? Like, how do you have that back-end tech to really power it? And so that's really number 2. And number 3 ultimately is quality. I think a lot of people are talking about the deprecation of third-party cookies and all this in 2022, but Google Web Vitals is going into effect in like May of next year, and that means an SEO hit to a lot of publishers, and I don't think enough people are talking about that. Viewability is still 54 to 57%. It's a huge way that publishers can really start to move the needle, even with the upcoming deprecation. So like outlining those three pillars have really helped anchor the team, and provide kind of that narrative that they can go and run with, even though we can't have 15-minute face-to-face meetings.
Allie?
Yeah, I think, for me and my teams in 2021, ever since I've gotten into campaign optimization, January and Q1 has become my favorite time of the year, because it's sort of, December, we're all heads down right now, delivering out these campaigns, just pumping out impressions and getting that performance for our advertisers. And I love January because it's a time to reflect and think about what did we learn, and how can we build ourselves up into the coming year. And something I'm looking forward to doing this year, across both of my teams, who now have more senior people on them as well as they've come up in their roles, is how do I involve them more in process design, process optimization, and really, get them to have a stake in all this. Because for me in my career development, one of the most rewarding things has been taking what I've learned from campaign optimization and applying it to the work that we do in real life. So I'm looking forward to bringing my team along on that journey even more so.
I'm actually curious, does anyone here have someone on their team specifically looking at new market, in the news things? So death of third-party cookie, like who's the one person solely focused on knowing that things are coming out in the next year, and how are you going to deal with those? Because I don't think that on ad operations teams, like we ever really thought about, who's actually tasked with knowing what's out there, what's coming down the pipe.
Yeah, we do. It's there's a lot being thrown at it. Like there's a lot happening, right? I mean, if you turn on, I keep talking about Vitals, but like if you turn on the Google Web Vitals, the Chrome extension, like sites are kind of out of control. So it's like one person or some of the privacy, not just with third-party cookies, but what's happening in an app, right? So I think it's like one person or team around knowing what's happening, but I think that and that's like something you can staff for. I think the bigger hurdle is how you take that and then activate it across the organization, right? Like having one person know about it doesn't do you any good if they're hitting silos culturally. So that's always the hurdle we're running into.
If they had a stake in actually implementing it across the org.
Yeah, and I think from our side, the thing that we're gonna focus on next year is more technology. We wanna try to tap deeper into the supply chain and build more programmatic technology and just to be more transparent and help publishers to around that as well. So try to take away a lot of the big tech vendors and remove and get more spend to the publishers.
That's a big thing, right?
So I will tap into both Jeff and Allie's and mine Q1.
That's a major task. You have your task cut out for you, for sure.
we love that.
Well, guys, I think we've run a little over, and that's cool. I think it's been a great session. Thank you, audience, for attending. Feel free to follow up with Peo in the Tech Hall or by DM if you want to learn more about DanAds and self-service, or if you want to hear how Jeff, or Allie have all implemented self-service, optimized self-service. Thank you, everyone. See you back on the main stage.